food prices get to 30% of your income, people take to the streets. And you look at this current crisis in Ukraine, Russia, a big wheat producer, big potash producer, the implications to food prices globally and what that's going to mean. So I think you've got scarcity, you've got underinvestment into replenishing these resources, then you've got the monetary factors. You've got the unprecedented printing of money. I think in the U.S. alone since 2019, we've seen a 25% increase in the money supply. So you've got scarcity, you've got low-hanging fruit, then you've got social issues. You've got places where, not in my backyard, so people don't want mines going ahead. You've got water challenges. So you've got all these forces, and my fear is it's creating a perfect storm for an explosion in commodity prices, which is not going to be good for the average person. It's going to create larger gaps between the rich and poor, and it's quite a concerning situation.
Hey everybody, this is Rob Kientz with goldsilverpros.com. We have a first-time guest on the program. It is Shawn Khunkhun, who's the president, CEO, and director of Dolly Varden Silver, to join us to talk about the market and also give us some updates on his project, which seems to be exploding and have a lot of great news. Shawn, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Robert. Grateful to be on, and I'm a fan of your show, so it's nice to be on.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. I know you and I have known each other for quite a while, and we speak, quite a bit. And Shawn, I guess the most exciting thing that's happened to the precious metals markets here in the last few weeks was, partially due to the crisis in Russia, partially due to inflation, a lot of things going on. Gold, touched on its all-time high again last week, and silver, had a really strong showing as well. That has to be good, for the precious metals market overall. What's your take on that, running a silver company?
Yeah, I tend to take a longer-term view. So I look at 2021 and I see the majors selling gold at an average price of about $1,800, which is a record all-time high from a year standpoint. And so I think that the gold price is at a place right now in every currency, including the US dollar, where it's very profitable. And if you look at the majors, if you look at companies like Newmont, Barrick, the fact that they exceeded their 52-week highs by 15 or 20% on this run is a really good sign. It doesn't feel like a bull market for a lot of gold investors, but I feel like there's a lot of signs that we're in a very healthy environment. So I'm celebrating the price of gold. I'm celebrating how the big boys like Franco and Newmont are trading. And I'm looking for now that next phase where a lot of these larger companies, they haven't focused on replenishing their mineral inventory. And that's where a company like mine can come in and play a big role.
Yeah, and that's really interesting you bring that up. I feel like, Shawn, we're in a world of scarce resources. A lot of what's going on in the world geopolitically has to do with resources. The Belt and Road Initiative, China, Russia, BRIC nations, Blue Dot, between the U.S., Australia, Japan. Everybody's trying to build out that commodity base and that trading base. And we've seen, not only due to inflation, but I also think because minerals are getting harder to find, we've seen 10-year highs in copper and 14, 15-year highs in zinc. So we're starting to see a lot of this in the base metals. And from my research, the precious metals are getting harder to find too. What do you think that portends for the industry the next 5 to 10 years? You think we're going to see a lot of consolidation, like you mentioned, majors taking out juniors? What do you see on that front?
Well, it's interesting because I think there's a lot of factors and forces that are going to lead to higher prices. So I think on one hand, I go back to the Arab Spring, where we saw some unrest in the Middle East because food prices got to a place where when food prices get to 30% of your income, people take to the streets. And you look at this current crisis in Ukraine, Russia, a big wheat producer, big potash producer, the implications to food prices globally and what that's going to mean. So I think you've got scarcity, you've got underinvestment into replenishing these resources, then you've got the monetary factors. You've got the unprecedented printing of money. I think in the U.S. alone, since 2019, we've seen a 25% increase in the money supply. So you've got scarcity, you've got low-hanging fruit, then you've got social issues. You've got places where, not in my backyard, so people don't want mines going ahead. You've got water challenges. So you've got all these forces, and my fear is it's creating a perfect storm for an explosion in commodity prices, which is not going to be good for the average person. It's going to create larger gaps between the rich and poor, and it's quite a concerning situation. And some of these things I thought about 20 years ago, and for me, like I grew up in a middle class home, working class parents, and my whole goal here was to try to put myself in a position where I could protect myself and my family from what I thought was coming, and whether it's rising populations, which is causing scarcity, or these other factors. I would have never predicted QE. I would have never predicted wars and conflicts, but these are all leading to much higher prices.
Yeah, they are, and there are side effects of that, like you said. It causes people to stretch their budgets, and I also think it causes people to really search out good investment. Because you have to, at some point, Shawn, to stretch your dollar, you have to invest in things. You have to take a little bit of risk. You have to have some return on your investment. And investors really are looking for areas to put their money. Now, if we look at the stock market, if you look at P/E 10 ratios, as developed by Graham and Dodd, I believe, if you look at those ratios, we're at all-time high. So the stock market's not really the place you want to go, especially tech. It's just historically overvalued on a rolling 10-year basis. You look at bonds, and those are coming under pressure. And who wants to invest in a country's debt right now, given all the concerns that you just talked about? Where are people going to put their money? What are the undervalued sectors in the market? And I keep coming back to the precious metals mining companies and even the base metal mining companies, because that's true value. I mean, you have to have those things to make everything that we use every day. Either you're going to mine it, or you're going to grow it, or we don't have it. But I see such critical underinvestment right now, Shawn, in the mining space. Unlike gold since 2016, the miners haven't caught up proportionately. They haven't had their big boost. My friend Dave Kranzler of Investment Research Dynamics thinks that this could be, a generational wealth building opportunity for investors, because he's never seen the mining stocks this low relative to, the commodities. What's your view on that? Are you paying attention to these ratios? Or are you looking at this going, hey, this is a really good opportunity for people to get into this space?
Yeah, well, for me, I'm a student of history. So when I look back, I think we're in I think Ray Dalio quoted the term, a changing world order. And I look at some great dynasties of the past, whether it was the Dutch, the British, the Chinese empires. And I think we've been in this changing world order. And so, I think wealth is going from west to east. And in this changing world order, how do you protect yourself? And I think historically, precious metals, commodities, hard assets have stood the test of time. And I think we've been in an environment where it's been a race to the bottom with currencies. So we've had currency wars, trade wars. Now we're seeing an all-out war. So for me, I've kept it really, really simple. I wanted to focus my efforts in safe jurisdictions where there's stable mining laws, where if a company had a resource, they had, whether it was production or a development story, the government was, maybe taxes would rise, but you wouldn't get nationalization. What good is a resource project if it gets nationalized? So I think for me, gold and silver are going to take us through the storm, and they're going to protect our wealth. But you need to have the right elements where you'll have the right to mine, and you're in a safe jurisdiction.
Yeah, I agree. So talk a little bit about your project. I know you have something out in British Columbia. Talk about that project for us and what you guys have been doing. I know since the last time I talked to you, you guys have made just tremendous progress on this.
Yeah. So we're in the part of the province. I live here in Vancouver, and my project is in Northwest BC. It's about a 16-hour drive, and we're in an area that people refer to as the Golden Triangle. And it should actually be called the Silver Triangle because a lot more silver has been found and produced there. But that's another story. So for the last 100 years, this area has been remote. It's been covered by ice, and it's been inaccessible. Yet people have gone to great lengths to pull out the high-grade mineralization that's endowed. And so now we've had our government in the last 5 or 6 years put billions of dollars into road networks, transmission lines, deep water seaports. And so companies like mine can go in a cost-effective way. And what we've done is we've taken this little company, Dolly Varden. I took over as CEO 2 years ago, and we're now at a place where we've got 140 million ounces of silver in the ground. We've got a healthy treasury, and our stock is up about 200% over the last 2 years. The market cap's grown almost 10 times. We're in a really healthy place, and it's because we've got a high-grade silver gold deposit in an area that's hosted some of the richest gold mines on the planet, gold and silver mines. And it's also an area that's been subject to a lot of takeovers. So there's a big miner out of Australia called Newcrest that's dropped about $5 billion on buying companies like mine. And $5 billion in the tech world, Rob, is nothing. But in the mining business, those are big numbers.
Yeah, absolutely big numbers. So I'm going to throw up a share of this project right here. Talk a little bit about this project, the history, like you mentioned, who's been mining here and what it could mean for your company.
So the slide that you've got up there identifies 7 deposits. What it doesn't identify is over 100 occurrences. So these are small, whether they're outcrops or discoveries through drilling. We only talk about the 7 deposits. And of those 7 deposits, 2 of them were past producers. And that's really important for 2 reasons. Number one, you can remove the silver from the rock. But number 2, the community is open to mining activities. And so we've got these 7 deposits. And as you can see, there's about a 3-mile gap in between those deposits. There's 3 at the north, 4 at the south. And it's because those used to be 2 different projects. And up until about a month ago, they were separate companies. What I've done is I've come in and I've consolidated that project under one banner. And we're now at a place where we have the size and scale where we should attract a major mining company to want to come and partner with us, whether that's to buy us or to invest with us. And that's what we're seeing. We just saw a direct investment from Hecla Mining. They've been producing precious metals for the last 130 years. And so I'm really satisfied right now. I've been working with junior mining companies for 20 years. I understand the industry. I understand what it takes for a project to move forward. And because of the grade, because of the size, and because of the location, Dolly Varden now is at a place where we should continue to see some pretty strong growth.
Talk about people that may be invested in your company. That's a large part of what investors look at, who's interested in this company. Because, the exploration space, I'm sure, as you know, Shawn, can be a difficult one. Investors, you need to get in and kind of hold for a while, especially if you're an early stage explorer. But when you see these other companies coming in, investing in you guys, it gives a sense of, hey, the big players in the space are definitely looking at this and are definitely interested in you. So if you talk a little bit about, who owns you guys.
What's really unique and interesting about Dolly Varden is there's 7 investors that own about 85% of the company. Mm-hmm. And so you've got 2 corporates, 2 publicly traded mining companies. This is Fury Gold Mines and Hecla own about 45% of the company. Renowned billionaire investor Eric Sprott is a 10% shareholder. And then there's 35% that are held by some of the most knowledgeable precious metals investors. These are institutional investors. So this is U.S. Global, Crescat, Sprott Asset Management. And so we've got a very small high net worth or retail interest, which is under 10%. So it is the validation that's come from investors that really understand what it takes to make a project work is a good sign to any investor or shareholder that's looking at Dolly Varden, that there's been some strong due diligence done by people that understand these companies and deposits.
Had myself on mute. So you mentioned you had, is it 150 million ounces of silver? Is that silver equivalent? Is it silver and gold? What's the mix there?
So when I came into Dolly Varden, I inherited 44 million ounces of high-grade silver, pure silver, not equivalent. And what we just added is we added about 1 million ounces of gold and about 19 million ounces of silver. So we've got about 1 million ounces of gold, 63 million ounces of silver. If you look at it from a silver equivalent basis, it's about 138 million ounces of silver equivalent, 50% silver, 50% gold. But for me, that's a part of the story. The real story is we've done 2 years of drilling under my leadership where we've made discoveries. And those discoveries have not been included in that resource estimate. So I anticipate that silver number to rise when we put out a new resource estimate next year. But we're also embarking on a very aggressive drill program this year that's going to produce more news and more data. So I'm hoping, I'm looking ahead at 150, potentially 200. But the real goal that I have is once you get to 300 million ounces, you're no longer just attracting precious metals miners. Now you're like the biggest miners in the world don't mine precious metals. You know, the BHPs, the Rios, they mine all metals. And so you get to 300 million ounces, now you've got to a size where you could attract the BHPs of the world. Yeah,
so is that going to be your model, Shawn? Are you guys going to explore and then look to get acquired by someone else? Or are you guys going to develop the mine? Or how does Dolly Varden operate?
I see this as a de-risking exercise. So I'm operating this company as if we were a major. You know, we're doing baseline environmental studies. We're getting road improvements done. We are building this company. We are de-risking it the way a major would if they owned it. But ultimately, like I've gone through, I've built a mine in my career. You know, I raised $500 million to take an operation into production. And I'll tell you, it's not my happy place. I enjoy drilling holes for discovery. I enjoy M&A deals. That's what I thrive in. So I think it would be better suited for a major to develop this mine. But I also want to make sure that we exploit every potential opportunity so that with our skill set of discovery, of regional M&A deals, to make sure we bring in as much value as we can before that moment comes. However, I am prepared to build it because ultimately one of the things that's motivating me and some of my team is trying to make the area a better place. One of my directors, Rob McLeod, is born and raised in the local area. He's from Stewart, BC. His dad was the mayor of the town. So for Rob, this is not about a business exercise of, growing ounces or a stock going from 20 cents to $10. This is about bringing jobs to an area. It's about making people's lives better. And I believe in the philosophy of win-win. Our shareholders can win, the stakeholders can win, and ultimately, we can do a lot of good with this company.
Yeah, when you talk about the Golden Triangle, that area has been prolific historically in Canada for not only gold but silver. It's an area which you've got big name miners in there. How, is that history? How does it help you as Dolly Varden get your message out? When people see you in that area, does it give you an advantage? Like when you're doing your marketing and talking to people, does it provide opportunities for you as a company that you may not get if you're doing your project somewhere else?
100%. I think the biggest challenge for a company like Dolly Varden, a company that doesn't have revenue, a company that doesn't have a royalty, a company that doesn't have cash flow, ultimately, the majors have blessed this camp. The majors are mandated by their boards to operate here because it's safe jurisdiction, because there is tremendous endowment. So that competitive tension, it's no different. You talked about tech, right? It's no different than Facebook buying Instagram for growth. And so Dolly Varden is Instagram, and Facebook in this case is Newmont. So and that's the other thing, going back to the macro. We were in an environment where we were in an everything bubble. You had cryptos, you had tech, you had we got really creative as we got into the pandemic with non-fungible tokens, and art was skyrocketing, real estate was skyrocketing. So my experience when I study history, for gold and silver stocks to really get the attention of the market, we need to have the environment that we are now in, an environment where the S&P is down 10% in the month of January. We need the easy money not to be able to be made in these other asset classes. And that's when gold, and so it's interesting if you look at it. So where did gold start the year? Around 1,800? Where did it go? Almost 2,100 in the course of about a month? Well, what was happening at that same time? The big U.S. markets were going down 10%. So think about the move we've seen in the metals, and we're just starting to get off the peak, absurd valuations. If that trend continues, where can gold and then the trickle-down effect to these miners, where are these guys going to go?
Yeah, I think the macroeconomic picture is so bullish for the precious metals, also a lot of the base metals as well. So as you mentioned, a lot of the gold and silver is produced as a byproduct. But for people who are focused on gold and silver, I think you're going to have an advantage. The leverage you're going to get as a shareholder of a company like Dolly Varden and others in the space is going to be much more powerful than it would be necessarily from some of these other companies, and maybe producing a mix of things. But looking forward to the rest of the year, Shawn, what's going to be the big news for your company? What are your next steps? Are you going to continue your drilling program? What exactly should investors look at for Dolly Varden for the rest of 2022?
But before I answer that, just getting back to your point about base metals, because we are a relatively small company compared to the majors, I've gone after the low-hanging fruit, which on this property is the silver and the gold. But if you study my property, the abundance of base metal opportunities, particularly in copper, and these mines in the Golden Triangle, if we looked at Eskay Creek, for example, which is now held by Skeena Resources, it started as a high-grade silver deposit, and then they got into one of the greatest gold mines on the planet. We've got all of that type of geology in addition to big copper-gold porphyries on the property as well that we haven't even started to talk about. But in terms of our plans this year, we're going to start with 3 drill rigs. We're going to start with 30,000 meters of drilling, which is about 300% more activity than we had on the property last season. So we're going to have 3 times the news. And, we have the ability, though, we have the treasury to do twice that. So my approach is I want it to be methodical. I want, the A team to be out there manning drill rigs. And, I want to be careful that we don't get out there and go to 5 or 10 rigs before we're ready. So I want to make sure that we can ramp up, but it's going to be a very news-rich year. And what I anticipate to come from this is I anticipate us to have more confidence in the deposit, to grow the deposit, to put out a preliminary economic assessment based on this year's drilling. And so these are all of the deliverables that we'll have next year from this drilling.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, preliminary economic assessment's great for investors. It gives them an idea, where you are at your economics. Of course, I think with the prices in gold and silver right now, you guys will be fine. I think most miners are throwing off a lot of cash at these prices.
So just so your viewers know, we do already have a PEA on a portion of the project. But it's important for me now to bring in, now that we've unified this camp, to bring in all assets under one banner.
So what about the exploration potential and the expansion potential? I mean, looking at the map that we saw earlier in the presentation, you're uniting, 7 projects together. I saw a lot of space in between. So how much of a longer term play is the Dolly Varden project?
Well, what's interesting is we've unified this camp. So there used to be a border in between the 2 deposit sizes. And so there was not an incentive for either company to drill on that border. But now that we've unified it and put it under one ownership, that will be part of our emphasis. But again, I think we're in an environment right now where as you see the share prices of these majors rise, they're going to use that currency to go in and acquire. And we may not even get out to test some of our best targets. We may be subject to a takeover bid. And so there's a lot of opportunities for investors. What I've historically seen with Dolly Varden specifically is if the price of silver goes up by 1%, we go up by 3%. So we're 3 times leveraged to the price of silver, which is interesting for investors who are looking for leverage. But what also is giving us leverage is discovery potential. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of areas where we can expand and extend known zones. But I think this project has the potential to double the resource, and it's going to be my goal to try to get us there.
Yeah, that'd be very interesting. Typically, when people come back to the gold space, the generalist investors will look at the big guys. That gives, like you said, the big guys some currency to go after a lot of the exploration companies, discovery companies. With the size of resource you have, like you said, you're right on the border of moving from, almost a junior to almost something in the mid category of companies. So it'll be interesting to see if you get there before they come knocking on your door, or whether they'll come early and then want to put money into it. And if they do come early and want to put money into it, of course, it means that you can do more work if you get that funding from a company that's interested in you guys. So a great spot to be in. I mean, a lot of different ways that investors should see value in your company, because you're at a point at which, you're going to be attractive not only to the general investment public, but these big companies that are looking for resource. And, as Tavi Cost has been on the program a bunch of times in Crescat, he has this chart of the gold cliff coming in a few years. Proven and probable reserves have not been replenished. And I think, Shawn, we're already there with silver. We're already in the shortages with silver. So any company that has a sizable resource to go with a good economic analysis is going to be very, very attractive. So definitely, I think you guys are going to get a lot of interest, and that's why we're happy to have you on the program. We like to bring good companies to people to take a look at if you're investing in this space. But it's the optionality. It's the different ways in which, investors could make money from a company like yours. And we see a lot of promise in that as well. Last question for you, and maybe the most important question for the program. We were talking about the jersey behind me earlier before the recording. I think Rocket played for Notre Dame and then the Cowboys, but in between he played for the CFL. I think you mentioned, Shawn, did you try out for a CFL team at some point?
I did. I did for the BC Lions, and got to catch some passes from a guy named Damon Allen.
Nice.
This feels like a lifetime ago. And part of my motivation for that is I switched from soccer to football because I realized there was a lot more girls that were watching the football games than soccer.
That's a good motivation. I hear that your son has some good size and speed. We may be seeing him in the NFL sometime in the near future.
I hope so.
Well, Shawn, it was good talking to you today. I appreciate you coming on the program and appreciate what you guys have done. Just a whole lot of progress on this one. And it should look really attractive to investors. I know you guys are going to be a really big success this year, and I look forward to watching it.
Like I said, Robert, I'm a big fan of your work.
Thank you.
I think you're doing a tremendous service, and I'm grateful to be on.
Thank you so much, Shawn. And everybody will have Shawn back on the program in the future as well, and we'll continue to cover him, as Dolly Varden builds out their resource and as exciting things happen. And I think we're in a time period, given the macroeconomic situation, that gold and silver are going to get more valuable. And those miners that are really in the space and doing a good job are going to offer outsized returns. And again, as mentioned on this program, it is one of the most undervalued sectors in the entire market, and that's why we like to talk about it. So we'll continue to cover this market on our Mining Stock Monday broadcast throughout the year. Stay tuned to Gold Silver Pros for that. Till next time, this is Rob Kientz of Gold Silver Pros. Thank you, Shawn, so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody, this is Robert. Thank you so much for watching that video content. I have a couple of quick announcements I'd like to share with you as we head out of this video. Also wanted to remind you, you can find us on goldsilverpros.com. We have a free newsletter. If you click here and enter your email address, we'll send that out every Monday to you, as well as we have special precious metals deals with leading bullion dealers here in the United States. If you click that button, you can go here and click on either Miles Franklin or ARC Silver and get the best deals in the business. Once again, thank you guys so much for joining us on the channel. Until next time, this has been Gold Silver Pros.